Hello everybody. Welcome to my channel, and thank you for watching me today, for joining me. First off, let me know if you see me well and hear me well, and type something in the chat. And I will read your messages. So again, welcome to my channel. My name is Ksenia Drokova, and for those who just joined, I will say a couple of words about myself. For those who's watching me for the first time, so I will do like a brief self-introduction. I'm a journalist, and I'm an international journalist with background. I'm sorry, with a background in Russia and Ukraine, and I'm based in Washington D.C. I've been a journalist all my life, for 25 years already, and I worked when I lived in Russia. I worked for a number of TV channels and radio stations, private independent media, and almost all of those media were Uh, shut down or closed because of the censorship, because of Putin's regime, or they were overtaken by the state. So that's why I changed my jobs many times when I lived in Russia, because always something happened to the media. I actually covered that in detail in my other videos. So I worked on TV, I worked on the radio, and I'm also a linguist. So I worked at the Moscow University while living in Russia. And I teach Russian as a second language. I have PhD in philology, which is Russian language and literature, and I'm really interested in everything related to language. That's why you can find a lot of videos on my channel about the language questions, where I explain something from the language point of view, or I analyze the narratives of propaganda and so on. So I lived in Russia, then I lived 4 years in Ukraine, and I learned Ukrainian language. I'm fluent in Ukrainian. I worked there as a radio host, and I covered the Revolution of Dignity and the annexation of Crimea, the hybrid war in Donbass. And then in 2017, I moved to the United States, where I started working for Voice of America. And you know what happened to Voice of America recently? Unfortunately, it was shut down in March of 2025, and it was kind of deja vu for me, because the exact same thing happened that happened before when I lived in Russia to the channels or radio stations I worked for. I also covered that on my channel, and if you're curious and want to know more, you can always find videos about that. I also work as an interpreter right now. As a freelance journalist and as an interpreter, Ukrainian English. I work with the wounded Ukrainian soldiers, help him to communicate. So that was my brief self-introduction, just for you to know who I am. And today we're going to talk about the Epstein files, but not in general. I'm going to zoom in on Russia's footprint in the Epstein documents, because as I said, I lived in Russia and I worked as a journalist in Russia for many years, for different media, and I know a lot about Russia, and so I can analyze current events from that point of view. And a brief announcement of what we are going to discuss today, what we are going to cover. First of all, the names we can find in the Epstein files, and the context those names appear in. Second, I will tell you about how the Russian bot farms reacted to this. And it's very, very interesting, very important, because there is already a wave of fakes, and I will guide you through them so you won't fall for them. Third, we'll talk about what it can mean, and could Jeffrey Epstein really be a Moscow agent? Because there are conspiracy theories about that as well. Now, I don't know, full disclosure, I don't know, but we can just think about it and what we can, what are our takeaways from those documents and mentioning Russia. So, and finally, Q&A at the end. And but I'm telling you right away, I'm not a political analyst. I'm a journalist who knows Russia, and I'm a linguist, so I'm capable of analyzing the certain narratives, but I cannot step into the role of political analyst. So that's why for another disclaimer for you. So let's start. Let me look at the chat. Thank you so much for your messages. Thank you again for joining me today. So let's start. And as I said, we will start with the names. Of course, Putin, the first name we start with. There are over 1,000 references to Vladimir Putin in the latest batch of files, and over 9,000 mentions of Moscow. What does it mean? These are just numbers. So we actually can't tell whether it's very significant or not, because as you probably already know, there are a lot of, in those files, there is a lot of raw material and also a lot of just like news articles where certain people are mentioned. And that's why we cannot, our takeaway from those numbers can't be like, oh, it's so significant, 1,000 references to Vladimir Putin. It's important that he is mentioned there, but the number actually doesn't tell us anything, because we need to get more material and we need to analyze deeper. So what about the context? Vladimir Putin's name appears in more than 1,000 documents from the latest batch of Epstein files. In correspondence with various people, Epstein discussed the possibility of meeting the Russian president. So there is a number of emails where Epstein is saying to someone like, I don't want to meet Putin there, I want to meet him here, or I don't want to meet him here, or that time I want to meet him the other time. So it's just that sort of discussion, like some kind of, I don't know, organizational logistical questions. So we can't take much from it. But at the same time, Epstein claimed to have turned down an invitation from Putin to meet on the sidelines of a conference in St. Petersburg in 2013. As far as I understand, it was during the annual economic forum. It's a huge event, annual event in St. Petersburg, and they were apparently planning to meet there. But then, as Jeffrey Epstein claimed, he turned it down because there wasn't real time and privacy. There is no evidence in the released files that a meeting between Putin and Epstein ever took place. By the way, I was in St. Petersburg during that forum, during that economical forum in 2013, because I was covering it as a journalist from one of the main news radio stations in Russia. So I did a lot of interviews, and I was there during that particular forum. What we can say about that kind of communication about Putin between Jeffrey Epstein and someone else, we can. Again, that's not what we know for sure, but we can see that apparently Epstein is someone who is in control of the situation, or he wants to be in control of the situation, because he dictates. He says, like, I don't want to meet him here, I want to meet him there. So that's that kind of discourse. But at the same time, they never met. At the same time, the files include a 2017 FBI report quoting a source who alleged that Epstein had been involved in managing Putin's shadow assets. There was a big article about that by Daily Mail, where they name Epstein like a shadow treasurer, Putin's shadow treasurer. But we don't know for sure if it was true, because it doesn't. It contradicts with the style of that correspondence I mentioned before about potentially meeting Putin somewhere. Because if you are in control of someone's assets, you are not communicating with about them this way. So it just doesn't add up, and for me, it doesn't look. So it's that version is it's doubtable. So I don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can trust it. But again, there are a lot of like gray zones. We don't we don't know anything about it, and we just need to look at what we have. Sources cited by the Daily Mail have gone further, speculating that Epstein may have acted as an intelligence asset for the Russian authorities. That's another topic. Was he really an intelligence asset for the Russian authorities? Again, we can only speculate on this. We can only talk about this. There is no proof, but we can analyze the context. The context we have. Again, as for being Putin's treasurer, for me, it doesn't add up. If you're a treasurer, you don't communicate the way you communicate. He communicated in those emails we see. So that's kind of strange. And that's actually what various experts say. I talked to different people, and that's what they think about it, that it doesn't add up, that version of Daily Mail and those emails where Epstein was trying to meet Putin. So another name. That's all we know about Putin in the Epstein files, and probably we'll know more because people just started reading it, and there are a lot of pages. The next name, Ilya Ponomarev. He is a Russian oppositioner, a former State Duma lawmaker. And how is he mentioned in the Epstein files? In January 2012, Boris Nikolic, a venture capitalist, former advisor to Bill Gates, and named as an executor in Epstein's will, wrote to Epstein about the political activities of Ilya Ponomarev, who at the time was a member of Russia's State Duma. Nikolic described Ponomarev as a main organizer of the then ongoing Bolotnaya Square protest. There was a period of mass protests in Russia, 2011, 2012. And as someone, quote, who might replace Putin, he went on to tell Epstein that Ponomarev would eventually become Russia's president if he, again, one more quote, if he is not killed before. At the time, Ponomarev was indeed a prominent opposition figure, known for his criticism of Putin during the 2011-2012 election protest wave. He later fled Russia, gained Ukrainian residency in 2016, became Ukrainian citizen later, facing Russian arrest warrants for alleged treason tied to his anti-war activism. This single email shows Epstein's circle actively tracking Russian opposition dynamics, not just Kremlin insiders like Lavrov, Churkin, I will talk about them later, but potential Putin successors. But here is the thing, it's very important, and I need to clarify this for you, because it's something you need to understand about the level of discussion here in those emails, and it's something that you need to understand about Russia. So I know Ilya Ponomarev personally. I can say that we are friends, and I respect him a lot. If you forgot, he was the only one Duma member who voted against the annexation of Crimea in 2014. The only one. But to be honest, he was far from a Putin successor figure. And any Russian journalist, any Russian expert or expert on Russia, political analyst, anyone would tell you that, yes, he was one of the opposition leaders, but he was far from like replacing Putin. And we couldn't compare him, for example, to Boris Nemtsov. We even couldn't tell that Boris Nemtsov was it was possible that he could replace Putin, even Boris Nemtsov. So it's like what we see in that email, it's very far from reality, very far from reality. And that is something that struck Russian journalists and the experts on Russia, as I said before, because we were like just a little bit shocked with the level of discussion about Russia. It means that the fact that they talk about him that way shows us that they don't understand Russian politics, and they don't understand Russian opposition, or the processes the events that were going on in Russia, Russian protests, the nature of Russian protests, and so on. And and um, and Putin himself, actually, who is around Putin, who can potentially replace him. Is there a person like that? Actually, even Russian people don't know if there is such a person who can replace Putin. And So that is a level of discussion that like puts smile on our faces, and the faces of my friends and colleagues. So again, I respect this person a lot, and he is indeed a Russian oppositioner, but the picture is not like it's far from reality. So that's what you need to know. It's very important to know the level of discussion. Let's go to the next name. Vitaly Churkin, a former Russian diplomat. Vitaly Churkin, who served as Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations from 2006 until his death in 2017, corresponded in 2016 with someone whose identity was redacted in one of the documents. When cross-referenced with a separate record published by the US Justice Department, that person appears to be Epstein himself. Their conversation suggests that Epstein helped arrange employment for Churkin's son, Maxim. Max doing better, Epstein wrote. He just needed to understand American biz habits. You're a great teacher, Churkin replied. That was about Vitaly Churkin, and then, of course, Sergei Lavrov. At least 142 mentions in internal emails, notes, and reports from Epstein's circle. Details include discussions of pretty girls from Moldova, potential meetings with Lavrov, contacts with ex-Slovak Foreign Minister Miroslav Lajčák, who noted spending 3.5 hours with Lavrov, ending with cigars. Gift from Vitaly Churkin, photo of Churkin with Lavrov. That's what we have on Lavrov in the Epstein files. There are also two businessmen mentioned in those files. One is Umar Jabrailov. It's a Chechen businessman and politician close to Kremlin power circles, close to Putin and Kadyrov. According to emails in the files, Umar Jabrailov arranged a meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell in Moscow in 2001, when Putin just came to the power. The previously released documents also include a photograph of a shirtless Jabrailov standing on a manicured lawn. Jabrailov told one of the Telegram channels, a pro-Kremlin Baza, it's a pro-Kremlin breaking news channel on Telegram, that he knew Epstein but wasn't close to him. He said he believes the image was taken around 1990 during a karate training session, though he claimed he could not remember the exact circumstances. And what is Jabrailov known for? He was a Duma deputy in 1997, 2003, 2007. He was he was a Federation Council senator, Radisson Hotels Russia chairman. He's the head of Russian Union of Travel Industry, and he was involved in some scandals. In 1998, Moscow gun incident, for example, he shot at waiters in the restaurant. No charges for him, and he is sanctioned by the US and by the European Union since 2022 for Russia ties, because again, he is close to Putin, he's close to Kremlin power circles. Another businessman, Vladislav Doronin, he's a Russian real estate billionaire. The emails shows that Vladislav Doronin invited Epstein to Moscow in 2009, and that he advised Epstein on obtaining a Russian visa in 2010. Doronin owns Moscow skyscrapers like Federation Tower, Neva Towers, global luxury hotels. He's a president of Capital Group. He has ties to Amman Resorts and Four Seasons. He has a kind of a playboy image. He dated Naomi Campbell for many years. In 2010s, he sponsors tennis and he owns private jets and yachts. Despite sanctions, he maintains London, Miami presence. And that's an interesting detail. By some media, he was called Moscow's Donald Trump. Because he's a real estate billionaire. He has skyscrapers and that playboy image. He dated models. So he was called by some media Moscow's Donald Trump. And one more name, you can find a short video about that girl on my YouTube channel. I just posted it yesterday. It's Masha Drokova. She has a different last name right now. She is a former press secretary and the federal commissar of the youth movement Nashi. There was a movement in 2000s in Russia, and it was kind of like Putin's youth movement. Very patriotic, very pro-Kremlin. They were involved in many like different patriotic events, and so she appears in the Epstein files, and this is kind of interesting because her name appears in 2017 email to Jeffrey Epstein, where she's introduced as a highly successful young woman, quote, planning to conquer the world. What does it mean to conquer the world? We don't know exactly, but that's a phrase they use. And at some point, Masha Drokova, who made this career as a youth patriotic movement commissar, and she was also known by giving a kiss to Putin, and there was even a documentary about Putin's kiss. About her. So at some point, she moved to the United States. She founded a venture company in Silicon Valley. And at some point, she became, so separate investigations showed she later handled PR for Epstein in 2017, 2018. Because she had a company, M&A PR Studio. Now she runs a venture fund, Day One Ventures in Silicon Valley, as I said. But when she was allegedly a PR person for Epstein, she wrote a big email to him. It is in the files, you can find it, where she offers a number of things to PR things to Epstein to kind of make his image better. And again, I will remind you, 2017, 2018. So we already knew everything about Jeffrey Epstein. And after that, she offered her PR services to him. So first off, she offered to film a documentary about him, because she's an expert in documentaries after Putin's kiss. Then she offered to, her idea was to start like a special award, found a special award in his name. And the third idea, that's my favorite, uh, she offered him to found an NGO, like a anti-harassment fund, anti-harassment foundation organization. uh, so anti-harassment organization in the name of Jeffrey Epstein. You understand how it sounds, but that probably was the idea of how to like whitewash his name, and how to fix his image, if you will. So those were her ideas. We don't know how it ended. There is also in those new released files, we can find the private text messages between Masha and Jeffrey Epstein, where she's telling him that she's traveling to Paris, like just sharing what she was doing there. And he was asking her for nudes. So that's what it's kind of like funny, from Putin patriotic person to Epstein's PR. That's interesting, quite interesting. And we can see how a lot of different circles interconnect here, from all those names I just mentioned, different politicians and businessmen, and even like patriotic organizations. That's all interconnects. So that's what actually what can be our that can be our takeaway from that. All those circles interconnect, but we cannot actually analyze deeply what was going on, again, as I said. But there might be something deeper. And that's what experts say, that uh, we need to analyze this in detail, and we need to put a lot of effort to do that. That's very important, because there might be something even more important than like sex crimes and human trafficking. It's very important, and it's horrible what was going on. I don't want to like make it smaller, but at the same time, we understand that there might be some other level, like geopolitical level. And we understand that the war in Ukraine is ongoing, and the ties uh, between the American administration and the Kremlin, Trump and Putin. It's very important to understand what are those ties, and what are those connections, and what are those interconnections. So it's very important to deeper analyze that material we have. And I hope the independent journalists and Russian investigative journalists, they will do it, and they have already started doing that. And Also, I talked yesterday. I was preparing for my weekly YouTube show. I have a weekly YouTube show in Russian, which I host for the Russian independent media in exile, called The Insider. You've probably heard about that media. This is the media that investigated Navalny's poisoning, and so I do a show about America for them in Russian, in the Russian language. And so I was interviewing an expert, an American journalist, David Sutter, who wrote a lot of books about Russia. He lived in Russia, and he knows a lot about FSB, and about how the Russian special forces and intelligence works. And so he knows a lot about that, and he knows how they work. So I talked to him, and he remembered, he speaks Russian, and he remembered the very good Russian saying, which kind of describes it perfectly. Дело ясное, что дело темное, which can be translated, it's crystal clear that nothing is clear. It's a very good saying, and it fits the situation. And I also wanted to, before I'll start talking about those bot firms and farms, and the reaction of Russian of the Kremlin and Russian propaganda to what happened, I want to tell you one more thing that seems important to me. So we see the way that the Department of Justice, the American Department of Justice, just kind of dumped all those millions of pages on us. And the message is, we know that there is a lot of just raw material, unverified. So the homework was not done, actually. And they're like saying, here are the files, good luck sorting them out yourself. And that kind of message seems dangerous to me, because that narrative, or that kind of that the type of communicating a problem that is, and it's very important for the American society, Epstein files. So that way of communicating a problem reminds me of one propaganda tool that is widely used in Russia. For example, when something happened, something serious happened, what the Kremlin does, what Russian propaganda does, they throw in a lot of different versions of what happened. Sometimes those versions, they contradict each other. Some of them are really like wild, unbelievable, absurd, nonsense, but they don't care. They just throw in a lot of versions. They don't care if they contradict each other. And it's for people to sort it out. And what happens next? The audience starts picking something they just like fits their values or political views or whatever, their mood at this at that moment. So they pick one of that versions and they believe it. And each can pick what they like more. And that is dangerous, because what happens now, we have a lot of millions of pages of that material. Some is verified, some is not verified. A lot of, again, like raw material. We know that. And there was a disclaimer. They told us that is a it has a lot of raw material. So, and what happens? People start to pick what they what clicks like with them, and they start analyzing it, and they start like making it bigger. Sometimes like they believe unbelievable things, or they that's how like different conspiracy theories starts. And next thing we know, the media and informational space, social media, is flooded with different versions and speculations and manipulations, and it's very in that chaos. So it's like creating chaos, and it's very difficult to understand what is true, what is not. It's like in about the situation in general, because it reminded me of that propaganda tool I told you about. So let's talk about other Russia's footprints in the Epstein files. I want to talk about a little bit about honey traps, because Daily Mail, I have already mentioned a big article in the Daily Mail, and they assumed that Epstein's sex empire was like a huge honey trap directed by the KGB or FSB. So honey traps, they are like a typical tool for Russia, for KGB. And there was one story in the recent new Russian history, about a story about a honey trap. I want to tell you again, just to give you a little bit more context about Russia, about what they can do, and it's for you to decide what you think about it. But I'm telling you these stories just to give you more context again, as I said. Let me look at the chat. Um, Again, thank you for all of your hard work and reporting. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bravery is needed in the face of this brutality. Thank you so much for your messages. I will look at the questions a little bit later, and then, as I said, I will tell you a story about a honey trap. So, in 2010, right before those mass protests in Russia, so before the elections, Duma elections, and before the presidential elections in Russia, there was a kind of rare moment of political vulnerability for Putin, because you remember there was a tandem with Medvedev, and in 2010 Medvedev was kind of in power, but we understand that the real leader was Putin, and Putin needed to return to power. That's why apparently they needed some kind of smear campaign. It was before the protests, but still, it was close enough to the election, so they need to kind of neutralize their position. And what happened? There was a girl her name is known. So her name was Ekaterina Gerasimova. Her nickname was Katya Mumu, and we can call it like a perfect real world case study for illustrating Russian honey trap tactics. Classic FSB Kremlin playbook that ties directly to Epstein speculation. And so what happened? She was 21. She was a Moscow model student, and she lured, seduced, if you will, several prominent anti-Putin opposition figures, including, for example, Ilya Yashin, one of the well-known Russian oppositions, who is now like in exile, but he was exchanged, if you remember, during the last exchange. He was exchanged, and with the help of the United States. So him and Vladimir Karamurza, they were in that a big exchange. And Evan Gershkovich from Wall Street Journal, and you remember that. So Ilya Yashin was there, and Ilya Yashin was among those opposition figures who was like a victim of that girl, like he got into that honey trap. And for example, a very famous Russian TV host who was always in opposition to Putin. He's a comedian, and he has very famous satire programs, shows. Putin hated those programs, by the way, Viktor Shenderovich, and he also got into that honey trap. There were some other like journalists and politicians, opposition, several people, and they were all filmed, whether like having sex with her or using drugs, and that was the whole campaign against them. Actually, the outcome of that campaign was not that big of a deal, as far as I remember, but they tried to use it later. By the way, for example, video with Ilya Yashin was used. So someone sent it to his fiancée in 2020, again, like to discredit him or something. And it was like 10 years later. She got that video from someone, so they were still using that materials. And there is even a movie, I think, about, you can find it, a movie about Katya, a movie about that girl and the whole campaign. So that's what happened with different opposition figures in Russia in 2010. There was one girl who like seduced several people for exposing them and to discredit them. And so we can see how those tactics work, and we can assume that nothing changes, and like they did it all the time, and maybe it corresponds with what Jeffrey Epstein did, and that fits into this, might fit into this theory that he was like kind of a Moscow agent, or we don't know. These are all, again, like all speculations. But we know what the Kremlin can do. We know about FSB tactics and techniques, and it all goes like, we should look at those stories and those facts in the context. So about the reaction, this is a very important and very interesting part. I don't know if you ever heard about bot troll network called Matryoshka, like a Russian doll. um I'm going to watch later. Yeah, you can watch it later. Sure. Thank you for joining me today. So let me please know in the comments, have you ever heard about bot troll network called Matryoshka, a pro-Kremlin network? Let me look at the comment. Have you ever heard about that? If not, anyway, yes, the answer is yes. Yes, yeah, the Russian nesting doll, but I'm talking not about the actual doll. I'm talking about the network, about propaganda network. And I will tell you more about it. There were some investigations. You can find them. So there is a layered pro-Kremlin bot troll network called Matryoshka. What do they do? What do they use? Fake ordinary users, pseudo media, sock puppet research accounts that amplify the same narratives across different social media platforms like X, Telegram, Blue Sky, etc., often using stolen logos of Western outlets. This is a very important part, because sometimes you can see a cover with something sensational, and it's a fake cover created by that Matryoshka network. They are known for creating fake covers of newspapers, magazines, different Western media with fake logos. And they did it a lot of times. They have done it before a lot of times. So after the Department of Justice latest document release, Matryoshka launched a wave of fabricated news videos styled as reports from Western media, pushing claims such as, for example, Ukrainian children as Epstein's main resource after 2014, with a fake story that Zelensky allegedly knew and communicated with visitors to Epstein's island. Fake. If you see an article like that or a cover like that telling that story, just know that it's fake. It's created by that Russian network Matryoshka. One more story. And if, as you see, they reacted quick. The response was quick to the released files. Actress Catherine O'Hara supposedly shortly before her death, accusing French President Emmanuel Macron of protecting a pervert lobby and visiting the island 18 times. No such statements exist. So she never said that. She never said that before her death. Emmanuel Macron was not involved. So this is also a fake story. If you see that article, an article like that, just know that it's fake. A clip branded as Al Jazeera claiming that in 2025, 1,005 Ukrainian refugee children disappeared in France, and that Bill Gates was involved in trafficking. Also fake. It was branded as Al Jazeera, but it was not Al Jazeera. A video using Reuters news agency branding, alleging New Caledonia has become the new Epstein Island with invented figures of 112 visits by Bill Gates and 91 by Prince Andrew. So also a social blade segment claiming that Google searches by conservative Europeans about moving to CIS countries rose by 8,000% after the file's release. So those are all fake stories. And the insider, the Russian media in exile that I mentioned, it's actually an international media, checked the official accounts of all the named media outlets and confirmed that none of these videos were ever published by them. They exist only in the bot network ecosystem. So please be careful and just know what they do now. They throw in a lot of fake articles, fake news, and fake covers. They create fake covers using the logos of existing reputable media. Just be careful. So what was the official reaction in Russia? I will look at it later because so I don't know much about that now. I need to read more, and also it's very important to wait for the weekend because they have their main TV shows on weekend, and I will see what they will say about the Epstein file. So it's interesting, and. Because I think Russian propaganda might be in a difficult, tricky situation here. They need to say something bad about the American administration, or like criticize it, but at the same time not criticize it too much. So I will see how they get out of this situation. As for the official reaction, Maria Zakharova, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, she said the Epstein documents highlight the double standards of Western elites. They lecture us on human rights while enjoying equally depraved leisure with interesting partners. End of quote. It's a very predictable statement, a very predictable thing from the official Russian official, because it fits into their main narrative that about double standards of Western countries. So they in the West there are double standards, and also about it fits the whole narrative in Russia, inside Russia, about that everything that is going on outside Russia, in Europe and in the United States, like in the Western world, it's all like chaos. And look what is going on there. They're just like falling apart. They have scandal after scandal, and they have look what they have. Putin told us many times in his speeches that I don't know, NATO countries are full of perverts, sexual perverts, and what we see now, it's true. We see that story about Jeffrey Epstein. We see how many people from the Western elites were involved in that. So he was right, apparently. And we Russian people, Russian patriots, you should be, of course, you should be afraid of NATO. And the war with NATO was the main narrative in Russia, has been the main narrative in Russia since the war started, the war with Ukraine, because they told people that if you if we don't start the war with Ukraine, they didn't phrase it that way, like if we don't protect our country, because their narrative was like it was just a response, they didn't start the war. So if we don't start that so-called special military operation, NATO soldiers will be there the next day, and you will be in NATO. NATO will like occupy us, and they will bring their twisted values to Mother Russia. And so they frightened, they scared people with that narrative. Even now, you can see videos from Russia. I recently watched like a video of an old lady from some Russian, I forgot which region it was, but there is a huge problem in Russia with the toilets. Putin is always talking about toilets like it's a big problem in the Western countries because apparently we have non-gender or neutral gender like toilets. It's a big problem because it tells us that Western civilization is like going downhill if they have neutral gender toilets. But the big problem in Russia is that they don't have toilets at all. Well, there is no problem with the toilets in Moscow and other big cities, but if you go deeper, there are a lot of Russian cities and towns and villages. I'm not talking about villages, and so where there are still no toilets, and it's a big deal. For example, you can even read the news like they finally a real toilet, a real restroom was installed in such and such school in such and such Russian region. I'm not joking. It is what it is. And so I recently watched that video with an old lady who was talking that they don't have a toilet, like they don't have heat and electricity and water and something like that. But then the reporter asked her, but what is like scarier, not to have all those basic things like water and electricity and so on, or not to have NATO soldiers in your town? And she said, "Oh, of course, NATO. I'm ready to live without a toilet, but no NATO soldiers here." I'm pretty sure that lady doesn't even know what the abbreviation NATO means, but that's how they scare people with that. And that's why their narrative now, like anything bad that happens, bad or controversial, or that like some problems or scandals in the United States or in the European countries, it benefits Putin because he can say, look at the West. Rotten West. We know that expression from the Soviet era. Look at that rotten West. Everything is just going to hell there. And only Russia is like an island of stability. And we need to stay strong and continue fighting those non-traditional values. We need to continue fighting the West. So that's probably how they will continue using this situation, and that's why they react that way. That's why, but at the same time, the fact that they launched that campaign with Matryoshka, with that pro-Kremlin bot and troll network, it's also important because the fact that they launched it, that they started it, and that quick, it tells us that might be something important, really important about Putin in those files, and they want to distract people with a fake narratives, fake news, fake media, fake covers, again to create the chaos. That's what I was saying later. That propaganda tool, when you throw in a lot of versions, a lot of different things, and you create the chaos. That's what we have. So I probably will stop here, and I will answer some questions. Is Solovyov in the files? I haven't seen him there, but again, 3 million pages. Maybe we'll find him there at some point, or maybe not. I don't know. So far, no Solovyov. Solovyov is one of the main Russian propagandists. And by the way, I know him personally as well. And I worked with him at 2 or 3 TV channels, actually. And at that time, like 20 years ago, he was a normal person. But then he changed. and his change was drastic, because now he's an aggressive propagandist, not just a propagandist, but very, very like brutal and aggressive, because he can say on air that he wants to kill people, he wants to destroy all Ukrainian cities, and he compared this so-called special military operation with deworming a cat in the early stages of the war. He said, like, during one of his shows, TV shows, he said, like, for the cat, for the worms, it's a war, but for the cat, it's liberation. So he basically compared Ukrainian people to worms, which kind of reminds us of like Rwanda level of propaganda, Rwanda narratives, when during the genocide in Rwanda they compared people to cockroaches, and that's that kind of person he turned into, and it's painful to watch what happens to people. So Solovyov is not there. Uh, um, how did that guy get open mic in Russian parliament? That man knew what was going to happen to him. To be honest, I don't remember the details about the voting, but I can ask him and I can tell you. And actually, I would love to invite him to my channel and interview him. And if you have questions, I will ask him those questions. And I don't remember the details, to be honest. I remind our audience that we were talking about Ilya Ponomarev, one of the Russian oppositioners. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions, but thank you again for watching. And if you have more questions, please post them under this video, and I will try to answer them. I will try to record a video if it's a big question to cover. If it's a small question, I will just type the answer. Thanks again for watching me. Thank you so much, and I will try to continue those live streams to explain, to share my knowledge and my experience if it's interesting for you. Thank you and bye.